It's justified having the fear because, trust me, I'd rather let more people die than change this status quo. So you need to understand that none of these laws are designed and will protect the people that they're supposed to. So until basically we overthrow the whole bloody way the society works and take it away from this patriarchal situation. Hello everybody, my name's Paris.
Hello, I'm Selena.
And this is
Love
Uncut. So to those new to the channel, welcome. To those returning, welcome as well. Definitely like, share and subscribe to the channel for more current affairs and honest discussions. So, today though, we wanted to talk about male violence in society, particularly framing it around male violence towards women. Because that's a very powerful movement which is ongoing, has been ongoing for centuries, to be honest. And we've recently had the unfortunate death of Sarah Everard, rest her soul.
Very sad, yeah.
I mean, look, when I first heard about the fact that she was missing through social media, and I shared the post because I'd want anybody to share a post of my loved one if they were missing. And I crossed my fingers, but I had a feeling of dread that based on what they described about her and her movements, that it wasn't going to end well. And then unfortunately, it was confirmed that she was killed. But then the shocking element of this is that the person who allegedly conducted this murder was a police officer.
Abducted her and murdered her,
yeah, allegedly. So that spearheaded outrage, obviously, and has led to, I guess, just the rehashing or the bringing up of male violence towards women, the pandemic that it is.
Yeah, and I think it's allowed a lot of women the space to share their experience of being a woman and at times living in fear. And it might not be like a huge fear that like every day you go out you're afraid you're going to be murdered, but there's definitely a fear or a discomfort that when you go out you're going to be approached or you're going to be hassled. You don't want to go out alone at night. So I think it's kind of brought those voices to the forefront and just allowed just others of us around the country, around the world, to really think about, gosh, do I feel like that? And really just coming to terms with that, because it's not a nice thing to think, actually, when I do go out, I do at the back of my mind get scared, I do at the back of my mind have to be really aware of what's going on because I'm on my own. And there is always that dynamic of man versus woman. Generally men are bigger and stronger, not all the time, but generally biologically that's what happens. And yeah, if you're the person that's not in control from a stature point of view,
like worst case scenario, you're not in control kind of thing.
Yeah, it's scary, so, and yeah, I mean, I don't know where you want to start off the conversation, but my point of view is that as a man, I just think you have to be aware that you can come across that way in how, and so that should dictate how you do approach women and how you should be considerate. Just be aware of not coming across as abrupt. Even just walking through town today, the amount of times men just approach you and expect a response, and it's like, actually, I don't need to talk to you. And approaching a woman on her own, you need to be aware of how you come across, and not being threatening or scary. And I guess, I'm talking about how you approach people, but in terms of the Sarah Everard case, that's not even a point to consider, because the person that approached her, allegedly, is a policeman. So as a woman, you'd trust a policeman, wouldn't you? So you wouldn't even be worried about how they're approaching you, and she probably thought he was helping her or going to give her a lift home, or I don't really know the details. I think that's still yet to come out, but yeah, I don't know. It's just really sad. I think it's really sad that the Sarah situation is awful. Someone died, and
many other thousands of women every day.
Exactly. that is like extreme and that's horrific. But even just the little things are bad too, in terms of just women not feeling safe.
Yeah, mental health.
Yeah.
It's exhausting. It's a second job, I guess, having to think about what you can wear, what time it is, planning your route home from every event. It's stuff that, our friend has said, allude to, which is stuff that I've always been conscious of, in terms of going out with friends of the opposite sex and like them going home. But I don't think the conversation has really been hashed up that much.
I think as a woman you just feel it's something I have to deal with. At least this is how I've always felt. It's not right, but it's something that I have to deal with and I have to be aware of, and I have to take those extra steps to be aware of what time I'm going home, or to really think, actually, should I be walking on my own at this time, or what route should I take so I'm less likely to encounter many people. Or if you go for a walk, sharing, or even just taking an Uber, sharing your status. Like, I really shouldn't have to do these things, but I feel because of what happens in the news and because of what I've been taught growing up, you have to be extra careful. You have to be more careful than a man. Even going out as kids, I had a much stricter curfew than my brothers. Do you know what I mean? It's
yeah, and it's exactly. I mean, the world is that way. It is designed in a patriarchal way, right? Where men are the heads of the society, and this is a power structure which is built on the oppression of others who aren't men, who aren't white men as well. We need to understand this intersectionality, and I think unfortunately that does get missed in the conversation a lot. And I think, obviously those kind of extra measures that you've had to take, it's you kind of adapting to the world as it is rather than trying to live in it as it should be. And at the end of the day, I guess if the police aren't going to protect you, then who is? And I have to say there's overlap in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement, in terms of, it's because it's the police officers in situations that are perpetuating these injustices against people that makes this movement so pertinent, because it's literally like the fabric and the institution of society is persecuting you as a woman, as a ethnic minority, as someone who's non-binary, and keeps going. There's a lot of like unheard voices basically, and it seems to take someone to pass away for people to at least pay attention for 10 seconds, and that's a scary thing, because if Sarah Everard didn't pass away, then there wouldn't have been the night vigil with women on Clapham Common,
which technically was illegal, as the police wouldn't even let it happen legally and work with the organisers to make it safe. I mean, yes, we know there's a pandemic. Yes, we know it's not ideal for everyone to congregate in a space, but these are exceptional circumstances. People wanted to grieve. People wanted to, wish her well, wish her family well. People wanted to show that they cared, show their respects, and they approached the police, how do we do this safely? And the police just shut it down. Yes, they have their concerns, but the thing is, people are going to do it anyway, so why not just work with them at least?
Yeah, this is a moment of humanity.
Yeah.
Not always, these rules don't always need to kind of dictate the status quo. And I think it's because the thing is, if you're allowing people to have a vigil endorsed by the police, I think this is their perspective. They're like, one of our own has allegedly done something to somebody, and now we're endorsing the perception that there's something wrong inherently with our organisation.
Well, there is, clearly.
There is, but I mean, across all the isms, the police and many institutions across the world, but particularly the law and order institutions and the healthcare ones, when they don't have things on an even keel or equal balance, it matters. And I think just for the sake of status quo, people would rather a few women, pass away, or ethnic minorities are brutalised, so that they can maintain the status quo. Because a lot of people are like, this law and order thing is the backbone of society. So that's where you get victim blaming, or you get gaslighting, you get deflecting, when women explain their stories, or when other people who have felt persecution from systems explain their stories, because it's just linked to almost a societal contract. So people are like, well, if I can't rely on that, then what can I? And to change the status quo, and to realize that if you're not safe, I'm not safe. Like, people don't want to embrace that reality, if that makes sense.
Well, I get what you mean. I do get what you mean. They want a safe face, basically. That's it. And it's kind of a bit of a segue, but I watched a documentary, and it was basically talking about American police and how victims of rape have come forward, reported what happened to them to the police. They've had the test done in hospital, and that goes into a rape kit that needs to be analysed, right? Basically, the investigation found that there were thousands upon thousands upon thousands of these rape kits stored in warehouses that hadn't been tested. So none of the victims had any closure in terms of even just knowing the test had been done. They were waiting for years. They were chasing up with their counsels, their legal representatives, all this kind of stuff, and nothing was done until one woman actually took it upon her shoulders as a lawyer to investigate this and set up her own team to get access to these kits and test them herself. And then they would then give the police the results, and the police would follow up. And this wasn't just in one state, this was nationwide, in America. And it was just so sad, because they also went through some of the reports that the police, when you have a statement and then you have the police response, and the police are kind of saying unlikely that this is a rape based on, her attitude, or unlikely this was a rape based on what she was wearing, or she was drunk. And it's like, just the initial attitude is that this person is lying, they're not a victim. And so why should we even invest time in investigating it? And bear in mind, these victims, the perpetrators of these crimes, went on to rape more women, and they found that out when eventually the woman who set up the charity did the testing. And so a lot of women could have been saved from going through that if the police had just done their job in the first place.
Yeah, and the thing about this issue of male violence against women, or male violence in society, we need to understand that it is the fabric of society. This patriarchal society, this entitlement of men being at the helm of everything, right? This God-given right, which is basically where it came from. Someone has interpreted that God gave them the right to do what they will with the world and its inhabitants. Therefore, I'm trying to say that it's so interwoven into society. It's not like it starts when you're 18. Like, lots of people's stories are starting from when they're school age, in terms of having to second guess the way that they're acting and they're moving around. And in terms of what you're saying, there's an intersection there in terms of a lot of victims, when they are sex workers, for example, it's less likely to be taken seriously, it's less likely to be resolved.
Not even sex workers, just any woman. It's getting better, but it's just this view of, I don't know, it's like, oh, if you're out in a club, you're asking for it anyway, or if they're your husband, they can't it's just all these preconceived notions.
It's easier to allow you to suffer than to challenge the status quo, because if I unpick the status quo where I am the dominant force, I'm threatening my position. So there's because of my power and privilege, what's happened to you is far away from me anyway, but then I'm not going to unpick and investigate this same society I'm the head of. Why would I do that and give you guys the power? And it's sickening, but that's what's basically happening.
Yeah, but I don't know, you're in a position where you can help someone, or at least make them feel like they're already going to feel awful based on what just happened to them. That's horrific to go through. That has trauma and all this stuff involved, and people start blaming themselves and when they shouldn't, and all this kind of stuff. You can help someone, go through that process in a better way than just shutting it down and basically saying to them, well, this isn't going to be investigated, or well, this is your fault. What is that? People don't get very far, okay, with the legal system built the way it is, especially in the UK, right? It's that breaking point. It's creaking, and so many cases get unheard
right? So I think the answer isn't in the legal system and the laws. You know, if there's a cultural embedded societal issue, then the law isn't going to change that. There's lots of things that are against the law, yet these things we're still seeing perpetuated. You know, for example, violence against women, that's clearly against the law. Violence against anybody is against the law. But so we need to really unpick the culture, and the culture is that, I mean, here's the thing, I am aware that women are, you know, live in fear, right? So I know that when I'm interacting with a woman, there's a spectrum of, is this guy creepy or not? Like, I know I'm immediately being analysed like that by every woman that I encounter in every setting. And the settings do make a difference. Are you on a tube? Are you at work? Is it a house party? You know, and usually that's what we also need to think about as men, like when you're approaching someone.
Context, yeah.
Context is everything. And sorry, if she's in like you know, just by herself and it's 9 p.m, I'm afraid you're gonna have to just let this chance go, because it's you really are instilling a fear in someone that you wouldn't want your mum, your sister, or your daughter to experience. So that you know, it's complicated. There's no simple answer, but I think cultural change is where it's at, and we need to understand that, as I say, a lot of people believe that peace is predicated on dominance, you know, of one person or one people over another type of people, and including physical dominance.
What do you mean by peace? I don't get what you mean by peace is based on that.
Peace, aka no unrest, no civil unrest.
Right.
Is built
so no
on,
one challenging it.
Yeah, it's built on how many nuclear warheads you have. You know, that's a deterrent. Or I'm bigger. You know, and people need to understand that just because you're a man, you're not inherently violent, but you are taught by society that your physical dominance is the tool through which, you know, you can maintain dominance over other people, men, women, children. And
I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair that that kind of narrative exists, and I don't think it's fair that women have that view that men, because they're either bigger or just men, can have that predisposition to potentially be violent. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not fair that you have that fear of someone that you don't know being that way inclined. But because of history and what you see in the news and just people being afraid of stuff happening to them or getting in the wrong situation, and just because sometimes guys can be a bit creepy, or a bit like entitled, you know, it's like if you don't respond to them in the way they want you to, they do get offended at times. It exists, and that's why women feel that way. So whilst it's not fair, I do think it is justified that people do have that fear and want to protect themselves.
I think it's justified having the fear, because trust me, I'd rather let more people die than change this status quo. So you need to understand that none of these laws are designed and will protect the people that they're supposed to. So until basically we overthrow the whole bloody way the society works and take it away from this patriarchal situation, which is not going to happen. So yeah, you're going to have to live in fear and just move accordingly, which means things like watching your own context and having to second guess. That is not cool, but what I'm trying to say is if people can't, I guess, mobilize, you know, and pick the leaders who want to move quickly from the status quo, people like Corbyn or something like that, then we're going to have to deal with this, you know. And it's angry, but what I'm trying to say is, I guess we've got to move from, you know, observation to solutions at the end of the day. And I think the solution is literally unpicking a patriarchal society, questioning it. And none of these newspapers are saying anything about patriarchal societies. They're kind of missing the mark in terms of saying, let's make stronger laws, let's you know, tell these men not to do these things. Go finish. It really does start from knee high, in terms of the way that people are socialized as well, but it's the patriarchal society that socializes people in a certain way. And even when it comes to hitting your kid, like, you are hitting your kid because partly because they can't hit you back. Because when they're big enough to hit you back, surprise, surprise, the belt disappears. You don't hit them anymore. So if we're in a society which believes that physical dominance is the way to maintain peace or order, and people, men and women, are happy to perpetuate those cycles as well, you know, then you are part of that problem. It's not a context of, you know, violence over someone who is physically weak, who is okay in this instance, but it's not in that instance, not in my opinion. So I think this needs some really deep diving that I don't think many people are ready to do.
Well, I mean, maybe just the first step is just think before you do something. Like, as I said before, read the context of the situation before you approach somebody. In your approach, make it very clear that you're, you know, like, just be like, oh, sorry, is it okay if I talk to you? You know, there's a way you can be polite. And if the person doesn't want to talk to you, then, you know, that's it. Just accept it. Sorry, I mean, there might be girls out there who like to be chased or whatever. If I'm not one of those, I don't know, I can't speak for that kind of person, but from my perspective, if someone doesn't want to talk to you, then you accept that and you move on, and someone who's meant to talk to you will. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
okay, you know, if I bring this back to me and I guess my personal circumstance, like I remember talking to someone on Tinder and they were just hostile, okay? Like, objectively speaking, they were hostile. It's like they didn't want to talk, and then I unmatched them, and then they messaged me and they were like, oh, you didn't even try. See what I'm saying? So I guess...
No, whatever, just don't even pay that person any mind, sorry.
No, so I think there's a perception within male to female dating that if you don't make it hard for him, you are easy. You're easy, which is a bad thing. You know, as if getting to know someone should be a difficult thing with loads of little traps set and all these different things.
But there are some guys that will call girls easy if there's not like a challenge. There are some guys like that.
But then how do women, you know, to maintain their own self-perception or the perception in the eyes of society, what obstacles do they put in place? Well,
I don't know.
Well, no, I've just told you. They be hostile. They act like they don't want to talk to you. But these men realise that this is all a game.
It's confusing.
Right. So then we need to detach ourselves from what society or what this man or this woman is going to say about me, and just be ourselves, because that's where all of this stuff gets lost in communication. I'm not blaming women, I'm blaming society, which tells women to do X, Y, Z, and then it obviously leads to all these men that approach and they hear you being hostile and they don't understand it as actual hostility.
It's all nonsense, really. I think that it's because everyone is so worried about what everyone else thinks about them, and all of that stuff does not matter. Just do what is the right thing to do
at
in
your
terms
pace.
Of your pace, in terms of being polite, and, you know, don't be I was going to say a word, probably shouldn't swear. Don't be a knob. You know, just be polite. If someone doesn't want to talk to you, okay, move on. If someone wants to talk to you and you're vibing, fantastic. That's a green signal. Like, it's not hard. And if it is too hard to read the situation, again, move on. Don't waste your energy. I know it's hard when you're younger, because you kind of, all your emotions are invested, right, in this situation.
No, because, you know, these people that, you know, hit out and brutalize people that, you know, have bruised their egos, essentially.
You mean when someone gets offended and they get angry?
Yeah,
okay.
and women as well, like, they have egos, but it doesn't have the same consequence. I think that's the thing. So it's a complicated, massive topic. But the point is, you know, you reject a woman, even if you don't laugh at some of their jokes, like, there's hell to pay. Do you know what I'm saying? Literally, like, why didn't you laugh at my joke? Oh my God, you didn't laugh at that, like, you know, and...
To be fair, I would like him to laugh at my jokes.
Yeah, if they're funny or whatever, I get that. But you know, if they're not, they're not. Yeah, right? So we need to... The best thing to do is to detach ourselves from how we've been socialised, unlearn that, unlearn a lot of... Question the origins of some of these societal norms. You know, oh yeah, sperm swims to an egg, so I'm not going to approach a guy ever.
What? Who has ever said that?
The internet, innit? So, I mean, the point is, again...
I wish the internet would just die.
But that's why we're here, so we can't. The internet's got us. But, so, you know, the point is, if you're a woman and you approach a man, oh, she's easy, he might think I'm easy, the power dynamic has changed, and it's just like, bruv, like, all of that is creating a world which isn't, which is contributing to how unsafe women are. Because I feel like if a guy could go out and know that if a woman was interested in him, she'd approach, it would save some of the harassment situations, but you'd have to combine it with a lot of different things, and a lot of it comes down to people you don't know, you thinking about people who you don't know, what they're going to think of you. So yeah,
well, it's also the other person in the situation, because you don't know who they are or what their intentions are. Do you know what? It's hard. It is hard because some people are just creepy or stalkery or playing games, or, you know, and I'm speaking from both sides of the coin here, not just men but also women and everyone in terms of what they identify as. But I really believe in going with your gut. If something doesn't feel right and you've thought about it, generally it isn't. Usually your gut is a good indicator of these things.
Yeah, exactly. But what are you going to do if the attacker, or, you know, the person is, switching it back to Sarah Everard's situation, a police officer?
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, people from maybe some ethnic minority backgrounds would already have a level of suspicion. You know, I don't know if Sarah Everard was a black woman, if she would have gotten in I don't know exactly how she passed away, but whether the police officer would have got the same level of traction. Not necessarily, I'm not saying all black people are suspicious, but the relationship between the institution and ethnic minorities is strained, so that maybe it's a little less likely.
I don't know, but I think that's a fair point, but I also think regardless of that, this guy is a monster. You know, anyone who does that, and I think people like him are the exceptions, but there are quite a lot of exceptions based on what we read in the news in terms of predators, whether they are policemen or just, you know, a man you see on the street, family member. You know, these things happen. You're more likely to be, sexually abused or attacked,
in your
beaten
home.
in your home.
The most dangerous place for a woman in the world is the home.
Versus the street. So these people come in all shapes and sizes, and sometimes you can't identify them. And I know I spoke about my gut before, but how do you do that if it's like your uncle doing something to you, or if it's your husband? You know,
they've already got proximity.
How do you navigate that situation, especially if there are feelings of love already there, or feelings that you feel you should love this person? It's well, you have kids, you know, it's hard.
Complex, yeah.
It's hard, and that's why it's such a complicated topic.
Yeah.
Because there's so many varying situations and layers, and everyone is different, and everyone's tolerance is different. But my thing is, you should be able to, if it's a kind of stranger situation, there has to be a level of respect for that person that you're approaching, and if they are not keen, then you just leave it. You know, you can't. Can't force it.
Yeah, no, you can't force it. But I've seen that happen, you know, hundreds of times, in terms of, you know, people approaching women very aggressively, and I don't know. You just can't tell if, like, they're into it or they're not. You know, and I guess you can take the number and then block them if you wanted to. But it really starts from the youngest of ages.
Why should you have to, though? But
no, yeah, I mean, it's, if it comes to, like, it's kind of like if the police are harassing you, like, you shouldn't have to just be calm. You have a right to be outraged, right? But then, do you want to get out of the situation whole or not?
Yeah.
Do you want to escalate the situation?
Sometimes it is self-preservation. Sometimes you are just polite to someone because you think if you tell them to F off, it's going to escalate.
Yeah, that's what they deserve no less.
Polite.
They deserve no less than an F off at many points. But
if you as a woman say that, God knows how they're going to react, especially if someone has had alcohol, or they're just a random person sitting by you at the train station, which has happened to my friend and I before, and we were so scared. This guy just wouldn't leave and kept talking to us, and it was just like a very menacing energy
to him.
So It's complicated.
It's complicated, and you know, I guess we can still add some stories of personal experience, like in terms of when I was 14 and dating. I mean, I wasn't dating; I had no income, but you know, my version of dating. I remember the girl I was talking to at the time. She said it like left field. Oh, if I wanted to, I could get you beaten up. You know, I could get you set.
Well, that's not right, is it? I mean, that's like some weird
Power
control,
dynamics.
ego, power, trying to tell you. I don't know. That is, and at 14, that's a bit weird.
Exactly. So we need to understand that
Evil, even.
in the context of your dating people, it comes into it where sometimes, in my experience, a woman is willing to perpetuate harm against you and use violence through men that she knows to maintain this order, you know. So people, women and men, are taking this model of patriarchy, of, you know, violence maintaining order, and then trying to use it on people, and it strokes their little egos, right? And then years after that happened with me, there was a guy named Shackles, rest in peace, who was set up by a woman named Samantha, who had an ex-boyfriend who she was in between with, but then she met Shackles, and then in the end, to prove her loyalty, she set Shackles up, and then he passed away.
There's a film about that, wasn't there? They made a film.
Because it was harrowing, because people are like, oh, it's only 16. But it's like, okay, so I've had a personal experience of someone literally saying to me on the phone, Shackles passed. You know it's a pandemic. You know, it's, you know, there's going to be people who you haven't heard of that it's happening to, and men and women are aware of violence as a tool to boost their egos, sometimes maintain power, protect their egos, you know. So it's deeply, deeply woven into the psyches of everybody, even kids, you know, as well.
Scary, isn't it? That
it's real.
Like, that can happen, that kind of setup can happen from a teenager, you know. It's very scary how minds can be influenced in that way, and it carries through to adulthood. You know, we see it happening. I mean, Sarah Everard was not a teenager, she was 33, I believe, and she trusted someone at 33.
So she should, yeah.
So she should, you know, but it's like, regardless of whether you're 15 or in your 30s or older, this stuff still happens. It's still a risk. It's still out there. So at what age will you ever feel 100% safe? You know?
You can't with the way society's set up right now. It's failing women, you know, on every metric. And that's because men's concerns are, you know, at the forefront, because that's, you know, just look at the cabinet in Parliament. Those people, basically, they're representative of whose interests come first. Okay, and then you've got some women in there, and then, you know, women of colour. But, you know, in terms of who's in most of the boardrooms, it's those people's interests that come first. So therefore, they're not going to feel what a woman's going to feel as readily on the emotional level of things. And I think, you know, sometimes there is a veil of extra suspicion as well as a man when I'm talking about these topics, because I feel like, I could be wrong, but I feel like if you're a woman looking at a man speak about it, it's almost like, what the hell do you know? But what you need to understand is that men need to interact with this topic and need to have an opinion and need to engage with it. So whilst we'll never know how it feels to be a woman, you do need to allow men to have spaces to talk about women's issues, because how else are you going to move forward?
100%. Surely that's just standard. If these discussions are not had, then men don't even know that a woman walking down the street at 12 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon might have a little bit of fear about how people
What's
approach her, or, you know, be aware of her surroundings. Like, you might not even know that, to even think about that, to even be aware of how you are approaching people or your body language or whatever. Like, and of course these conversations have to happen.
But it's kind of like, okay, so with women's reproductive health or menstrual cycle, for example, some women feel like, oh, that's women's business, stay out of it, don't have an opinion, don't discuss it. There is a ring fence mentality of, this is a woman's issue, you don't know what it feels like, you know, how dare you discuss it. But there are single parent dads out there. Yeah, these single parent dads are raising girls.
That's really stupid.
Everyone, yeah, if we want to actually, you know, move this thing forward, everyone has to have a contributing factor, right? And some people know more than others because they're living the experience. Some people know less, and they might even come with ignorant experiences. But as long as they're engaging, there's a chance for you to shift things forward. So
yeah, as
we
you
can't
said.
make this. Go on.
Sorry, finish.
Yeah, we can't make this a gender binary, woman equals good, man equals bad, because just through our own discussions just now, you can see how in different contexts this patriarchy manifests itself, whether it's reinforced by women or just men feeling like they run the world.
But that's kind of what I was going to say, that the conversation has to happen because people need to be aware. Look, every woman knows that not every man out there is a crazy psycho killer, right? Every woman knows that. But you have to be aware that that's a potential, and thus that's why these micro fears or whatever, or being very aware of your surroundings, etc., exist. So men have to know that women know that it's not every man that's a scary threat, but they also need to know that because we don't know which man is a threat, we're going to be
ultra cautious.
Oh yeah, cautious around all men, at least from my perspective. Other women might not feel this way. I can only talk about my own perspective. So men have to know that as well, that it's not a personal thing. It's based on aggregate data, and so it's not like people are pointing the finger directly at you, but it's just to help things move along. Everyone needs to be aware so everyone can confront these issues, everyone can confront potential biases, everyone can confront how they approach people or how they respond to people approaching them. Don't make it confusing, it's...
Well, it is confusing. It is confusing. Yeah, but you're right. No, I think your points are well said.
Yeah.
But this is a conversation that has been ongoing for centuries, and it needs to be ongoing. But it needs to be ongoing at a high level, and we need to also unpick this issue with the right tools. The legal system, I don't think, is the right tool. I do believe in community and empowerment and connection. I think maybe people being more connected within a community will help. I believe that better sex education will help as well as kids, and not doing women and men separately, because then it demystifies the other opposite sex if you're all in one room. I believe so. Because
depends whether kids are comfortable with that. Some kids at that age, because it's something new. I mean, I don't know what their age is that they are taught this stuff, but they might not be comfortable having the men there. I agree that it might make things better and less like, oh, we're separate and this happens there and this happens here and why, we're all different and all this kind of stuff. And in a way, biologically, yes, there are differences, but maybe at that age, I don't know if that's the right thing, because you know how kids are, they're like laughing at each other or making fun of what happened.
But they learn that though. They learn that from a patriarchal society that says, women should be seen, not heard. Do you know what I mean? And like, it's embarrassing for you to have a natural function. There's shame and taboo.
Yeah. I guess if you just bring it back to biology, okay. But there's also the emotional stuff.
Yeah, maybe when people get a bit older, they can understand that.
Maybe.
But again, we need to understand who's informing this curriculum. It's a certain status quo that's informing this curriculum, which is, miles and miles behind where it should be on women's issues.
On a lot of issues, to be honest, the curriculum lacks substance, but another discussion for another day.
And we've got to think about it, because in terms of Sarah Everard's vigil, because the police manhandled some of the protesters, peaceful protesters, and even arrested some legal observers, which is against the law. So police breaking the law. Because of that, Priti Patel wasn't able to put through this crime bill where you're not allowed to protest if it's noisy or it has the potential to cause annoyance. So it literally almost took away one of the most treasured democratic rights in the world. It was so close. It was so close to happening, and Sarah had to, unfortunately pass for the chain of events to happen.
People even to be aware the bill was going to pass, because I think if she hadn't unfortunately, been murdered, no one would have been
opposed to
trying to have these protests, no one would have then been, vigils, no one would have then been aware of the bill being passed, where she's literally criminalising anyone and everyone who even thinks of going to a protest. And it's not even about causing harm at a protest, it's having the potential to cause, like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, and then the Home Secretary gets to define it.
And people can get up to 10 years, which is more than
some people get for murder.
For rape. Yeah, like it's actually shocking.
Yeah,
I can't believe that document
but
got passed to go this far.
It's been paused, so that shows what collective power is. They're gonna hopefully amend it, but the point is, why does someone have to pass away?
Yeah.
Before we find our collective voice? Why do we only act on outrage? What about the day-to-day? What about preventing the Sarah Everard types of deaths? What about the names you don't know yet? You know, and it's like the collective, people only seem to want to come together when something horrible's happened, and usually to someone that looks like them, you know.
Yeah.
So there's nuances here. Oh, that person's in a wheelchair, I can't relate. That person's black, I can't relate. That person's Muslim, I can't relate. We're all humans, and you know what happened to Sarah Everard, the protections that they were going to take away would affect us all and all our different struggles, whether you're a rich white man who's got different struggles with how the divorce courts treat you, or whether you're a poor Indian person from London. We've all got struggles, but you wouldn't even have a voice, you know?
Yeah, but even like just everything that we have today in a way has been achieved because people have protested, picketed, even been involved in violent situations as well. Women voting. It's like, how can Priti Patel, as a woman, put this bill across when if no protests or anything like that had happened in the past, she wouldn't even be in Parliament. Do you know, like, it doesn't make sense.
Well, it does make sense from the perspective of you want more power, right? So the more that you speak against even your own collective interest, the better it will be for you, right? So if I come in there and say, you know, if I'm a woman, or you come in there and you say, yeah, these women are making it up, by the way, they just don't know their place, and you basically talk like a man with a woman's body and face, you will get far. In fact, there's probably YouTubers...
You might get far, but your heart's getting blacker the further you're getting. Do you know what I mean?
Bank account's getting bigger though, you got power. So that's where the logic is.
What will happen to your bank accounts?
Well, for a lot of people, you know, that is worth dehumanising other people.
Well,
that is worth silencing.
That's the problem with society, what we value versus what we should value.
And you know, it's no coincidence as well that, you know, it was a summer protest that suddenly brought this massive draconian bill into place, and that says enough about what they actually feel about the cause behind equality for certain people. And you know, it was them yesterday, you know, or it's them today in terms of different groups that are being oppressed, but it's you tomorrow. I think that's what this Sarah Everard situation shows us.
Yeah, you never know what's gonna happen.
So it was one set of protests, Black Lives Matter, who were just about to be silenced on one day, and that's what the bill would have prevented. But then it was going to be women's issues, if you want to separate them out. I mean, there are black women too, but it was women's issues which were going to be silenced the next day. So you need to understand that one person's struggle is connected to yours, and once they get away with brutalising one group, they'll be happy to do it to another. Why not? This is what power is, you know, status quo and peace. But their perception of peace, peace is violent.
Perceived peace, which is basically just silencing lots of people.
Yeah, and as Biden said, you know, recently, you know, silence is compliance in terms of the issues that are happening in America. I think it's a crisis of empathy, okay? If we all had more empathy, man to woman, woman to man, and we try to put ourselves in other people's shoes, then we would watch our step. Because sometimes you have to, depending on the context.
Well, that would just really solve a lot of things wrong with the world, wouldn't it? Empathy. Just everyone being a bit more, aware, a bit kinder, thoughtful of the other person's situation. But also just clearer. You know, everyone would just be a lot safer. I don't know.
Yeah, empathy.
We live in hope.
Yeah.
One day.
and it's just about the more you can humanise the next person, the more empathy you'll have, because you know you're a human. So if you humanize the next person, you will then begin to understand where they're coming from.
It's that whole thing of finding or focusing on shared interests, what makes us all human, versus focusing on the differences that can cause that kind of conflict or suspicion.
Perpetuated by the media, perpetuated by the society. The more you dehumanize people, the less you're going to care about what happens to them. And as I say, the net effect is not good for anybody.
There's no connection.
And, you know, I have to say, just because something has never happened to you doesn't mean it's not real.
Or us, anyone.
So it's like, we need to first of all get over that hill, because there's a lot of people out there where they're like, I've never been chased by a man. It's not real. You know, even men are saying that. You know, not even, but men are saying that. Women, you know, I've never experienced X. What did you do to cause it?
Yeah, so blame the victim.
There's billions of people in the world. You know, there's stuff that happens outside of your reach, mate. You can't watch movies and feel like you've experienced everything. Believe people, rehumanize them. Yeah, so there was a girl, a 21-year-old student named Blessing, who passed in the weeks before Sarah did, for example, and her case only got traction once Sarah's case came to the light. So, you know, we can't rely on the media to champion people equally. We have to champion each other equally.
Yeah, that's really sad, isn't it?
It's deeply sad. So, you know, as I say, we have to champion ourselves equally, community, and try and see the humanity in each other. A woman named Sada, who's disabled in one leg, 4'10", and she got attacked by 3 men at a campsite in Wales, and she fought back. She needed to fight back, and one of them were injured, but Sayada ended up getting arrested. The men got away. So
surely that's self-defense.
Surely, right? But then, unfortunately, the law system is not like a equal wand, and it was, you know, a racially motivated attack. So it's like, okay, what do you want women to do then? Fight back, run away, do nothing? You can just do whatever you want at any time, and we need to understand that, you know, injustice in that section is a threat to justice everywhere. So, you know, Sayada's case is looking like it's going to be overturned, but imagine the trauma that she's already gone through. She's been arrested, no one else has.
And she was the one that was attacked. Yeah, it's very sad. And not even, I don't know. It's also just that thing of not being believed, you know. It's one thing
to not be believed, another thing to be arrested on top of that. Can you imagine? Lots of women get gaslighted, deflected, not believed, victim blamed, but not every type of woman gets arrested as well and criminalized. Crazy. So we need to understand, you know, these institutions are not fit for purpose, but we within this institution see that when we're cognizant of that, so we need to kind of be the change that we want to see. That's been Love Uncut, people. Definitely like, share, subscribe if you're feeling the vibe. You know, we've got personal stories as well, you know, about near misses and things like that, but this episode is not
being, you know, violently
and
anyway, we won't go into it. By stranger.
And you know, if you want to hear those personal stories, then definitely let us know in the comments below. But this episode, it just touched on the wider context, and, you know, rest in peace Sarah Everard and all the victims we haven't heard about, in terms of victims of violence, you know, that goes unreported, unheard of.